Of course, as we all know, and as we've discussed at great length on this channel, John 5 has replaced Mick Mars and Mötley Crüe in a touring capacity, with the band releasing a statement that it was due to Mick's longtime battle with ankylosing spondylitis. That reason has been challenged over the past few months since it was announced, most notably with former Crüe vocalist John Carmine suggesting that Mick was essentially forced out of the band. Now, legendary drummer Carmine Appice has discussed Mick's exit in a brand new interview with Ultimate Guitar, and woof, it's a doozy. So today, we're going to take a look at Carmine's claims and discuss how accurate they may or may not be. It's no secret that Mick has been struggling for many years and a ton of pain. Unfortunately, I do think his struggle has shown a bit in his performances, especially on the stadium tour. But now it looks like they only played one role in his decision to step away from the stage. The interview with Carmine Appice becomes sort of a brief tell-all about Mötley, as he touches on all sorts of things, including, of course, the quote-unquote real reason Mick left, as well as discussing his relationship with the other three members during the early 80s. We're going to go through this quickly, piece by piece, and discuss each point that Carmine makes, beginning with when he was asked about his thoughts on Mick leaving, as the two of them are pretty tight. He said, quote, "I've been talking to Mick, and he told me when I was on the stadium tour, I was not happy. Basically, everything was on tape. It was all planned out and ultimately a lot of crap. And Mick is a pretty good player, and so to now let him loose and play the way he wants, that was never going to work for him. The truth is that everything has been weird for a while with Mötley Crüe, and Mick didn't like that everything was on tape. Mick told me that people that came to see it could tell that it was all pre-recorded and that everything was on tape. When you play in a stadium like that, you can hear a lot of things come to the monitors or what doesn't. And with Vince's vocals, bass, drums, guitars, and all the other stuff, it was obvious that it was all on tape. And Mick was pissed off and said, I can play these things. I want to play them. I don't want to make believe I'm playing them. So I think that's one of the reasons why he said, I'm done. Sure, the disease that he has doesn't help, and it doesn't make life easy on tour, but Mick can play all of the licks, and he was allowed to, which I think that was supposed to say that he wasn't allowed to. Now, what I'm taking from this is that Carmine isn't so much referring to backing tracks, but claiming that essentially the entire show is pre-recorded. Of course, I am nobody, and most certainly not a tech guy at all, but in my opinion, there is just no way that that is 100% true. Not saying it's not true, just not entirely. For one, I saw the stadium tour twice last summer, and just as a refresher, I pulled up footage of the Home Sweet Home solo from two separate shows throughout that tour, and one of the key things to focus on are the pinch harmonics that he does partway through the solo. They are not the same in both videos. He's not hitting all of them at every show. As with a lot of things like that, it can be a little bit of hit or miss to some extent, and it's just not those either. There's all sorts of little nuances throughout the night that differ night by night, as a rock show should. It should never be perfect. That's why the whole argument of backing tracks even exists. Are there some things that are tracked? Absolutely. I can almost guarantee you that the backing vocals from the Nasty Habits, the dancers on the stage, are tracked. Backup vocals in the choruses, tracked. Hell, I'd even venture to bet that the piano to Home Sweet Home is tracked, especially the new intro that Tommy is quote-unquote playing. It's got to be tracked, and with a god-awful tone at that, as I've said before. If he is actually playing it, find a new piano or keyboard. If it is, in fact, tracked, go re-record it with something else. Sounds like total dog shit. I believe they also use a backing rhythm track for the guitar, especially during solos, but that's totally understandable, and if I recall, at some point over the years, Mick and the rest of the band have admitted that themselves. There's also the video that went sort of viral during the stadium tour where the drum count in for Looks to Kill began, with Tommy visibly not playing. Here it is. Clearly, there is some sort of drum track, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Tommy is in fact playing. All sorts of things for a show of that caliber need to be synced in order for the show to happen properly with lights and all that kind of stuff. I've heard before that Tommy's drums are ran through some sort of effect to enhance the sound, but whether or not that's true, he's still actually playing. Not a doubt in my mind. And I think that's an acceptable use of a track. There's also been a ton of speculation over the years that 100% of Nicky's bass is tracked and that he's actually not playing live at all whatsoever. Who knows if that is in fact true, but regardless, the band has admitted a number of times over the years that they use tracks, with Nicky saying on Twitter, quote, "We've used technology since '87, been using sequencers, subtones, background vocal tracks, plus background singers and us. Stuff we can't tour with like cello parts and ballads, etc. Same as 9 Inch Nails and everybody else. We love it and don't hide it. It's a great tool to fill out the sound." And Vince's vocals on a track? Really? Have you seen the band or any footage? That's a laughable quote at best. To be fair, I do think he is using a track for The Dirt and Saints of Los Angeles maybe, but the rest of the set, just go watch footage and you can figure that one out for yourself. All right, back to the Carmine interview. The interviewer suggested that Mick wasn't getting along with the rest of the band, with Carmine saying, no, he wasn't. He had his own means of travel and would travel alone on a bus while the other guys flew everywhere. He said, man, these guys are pissing their money away flying to every gig. They were all busy still trying to be rock stars, and Mick just wanted to play the music. Mick wasn't interested in wasting time and money flying everywhere, so he traveled by bus. Their lifestyles are different than his, and so there were a lot of disagreements. I think he was just done. They were supposed to have done their last tour, and then they came back. Then they did the stadium tour, and that was apparently supposed to be the last. So when they came back again, he said, you can do it. I'm not going out with you for this. It should come as a surprise to absolutely nobody that Mick wasn't getting along with the rest of the band. And I say that not against Mick at all, but that's just how all 4 of the guys in the band are. Look at all the drama that has taken place with that band over the years. I also remember going to the movie theater and seeing the End concert film, and their tour manager at that time, he does an interview, and it's been a while, so don't quote me for sure, but I believe he says that it's very difficult dealing with them as they can't stand each other at all. They don't even want to stay in the same hotel. I want to say that he also mentioned that if they absolutely have to stay in the same hotel, it has to be on different floors. Again, don't quote me on that, but either way, should come as no surprise that there was some behind-the-scenes tension. As for reuniting after what was supposed to be their final tour in 2015, you should never believe a band when they say it's farewell, but in the case of Mötley, they made such a huge deal about retiring, even calling out other bands that have done farewell tours and then reunited, and then of course they signed the contract, the cessation of touring agreement, but of course there was the loophole that they could in fact get back together should all 4 original members sign it. Not to mention, if Mick really wanted that to be his last tour, why did he even do the stadium tour? No one forced him to do it. And, you know, with regard to the stadium tour supposedly being their last tour ever, that was never officially announced, and I don't think anybody expected that. Look how much money that tour grossed. While I have always admired how big of a deal Mötley makes out of everything, kings of generating press for sure, it was a bit disappointing, although way obvious, that they reunited. And I say this as a hardcore lifer Crüe fan. My favorite band of all time, but still, it got me both very stoked, but also generated a massive eye roll for me. Let's also not forget that they announced their comeback by blowing up the contract. Mötley again coming in being super dramatic, but awesome. The other thing I want to point out from the Carmine interview is that he goes on to talk about his influence that he had over the guys in the band, noting that Tommy got some of his tricks from Carmine, and most importantly, that because he, Carmine, had a red Ford Pantera, that's also the reason that Vince Neil had a red Ford Pantera, which is, of course, the car that Hanoi Rocks drummer Razzle was killed in. Rest in peace. And let's also remember Lisa Hogan and Daniel Smithers, both of whom suffered brain damage from that accident. Back to Mick, though, before we wrap this up. The stadium tour was supposed to take place in 2020, but due to obvious reasons, it was pushed to 2022. So I have always wondered, since the announcement that he was retiring was made, how things with Mick would have played out if the tour happened when it was originally intended to. That said, Mick is working on his long-awaited solo debut, and Nicky says that he wants to keep the band going until at least their 50th anniversary, which will be in 2031. So no matter how you feel about Mötley and Mick, plenty of opportunity here to check out things on both sides. Real quick, though, before I go, I do want to make note, it's unrelated to Mötley, but it's about Def Leppard. Obviously, they've been tour mates for a while, going to go through the rest of the year. Rick Allen, just the other night, was assaulted outside of his hotel, the Four Seasons in Fort Lauderdale, went outside to smoke a cigarette, and there's some 19-year-old pussy hiding behind a pillar outside, and he came out and assaulted him. So now, I believe at this time, Rick is still in the hospital, and there was a woman who saw the attack happening from inside the lobby. She goes out to help Rick, and in turn, she gets attacked and gets sent to the hospital too. So all the best to them, and fuck that loser that attacked them. All right, though, I got to take this camera because even though she's going to be largely disappointed, my fiance wants to recreate a certain videotape that we hope won't get stolen. So I got to go. But thanks so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.